growing up, there was a distinct disconnect from the tradition of Christianity from the point of Reformation, that essentially as a young person was like, well, they were wrong. They were always wrong. We are right. And so we almost just amputate half our body in that tradition. And so how does the Reformation actually play a part in that? Or
It's a great question. So a kind of caricature of the reformers is that they thought there wasn't anything really worth paying attention to between Augustine and them, or between Augustine and Luther once you get past Luther, or between Augustine and Calvin as you get past Calvin. It's a caricature in that it does capture some sentiment that emerges out of the Reformation, that they had this watchword or slogan of ad fontes, return to the source, to the sources, return to the sources, and by which they meant principally scripture, of course, but also patristic theology. And in that way, once it sort of got rolling in a very advanced sense, there did tend to be a kind of overlooking of the long history of stuff between the 4th or 5th century and what came in the modern world. But it's not intrinsic to the Reformation. The Reformation really isn't about casting stuff that is worth having away. It's about making sure that there is a Christian life that is accountable to Scripture and to the way that Scripture, and this part wasn't said quite as clearly because it wasn't seen quite as clearly for a while, but in the way in which Scripture was rightly read in the early church. As we've moved past Vatican II in the Roman Catholic Church, that conference in the middle of the 20th century, there has been a realization, you might say, that you have more in common with each other than you do with the wide rest of the world that has nothing to do with Christianity.
Yeah.
And therefore a willingness to work together on some basic issues like the sanctity of life, or, just whatever it may be. So all that is to say, there is that tendency in Reformation-based churches, and you can watch for it, but it's not necessary as a feature of a Reformed Christian to be polemically set against all tradition that has come from the church. In fact, you can't